Well, investigators are still trying to unravel the financial web of Bernard Madoff. He is the Wall Street money manager suspected of masterminding a multi-billion-dollar swindle. Lawmakers who want to know how it could have happened heard today from one man who says, "I told you so." ABC's Lindsay Davis has more.
For nearly a decade, he was a whistleblower. Today, he was a finger pointer aimed directly at the SEC.
The SEC continues to roar like a mouse and bite like a flea.
Beginning in 2000, fraud investigator Harry Markopoulos warned the Securities and Exchange Commission about a possible Ponzi scheme involving one of the most powerful money managers on Wall Street, Bernard Madoff.
As they didn't respond to my written submissions in 2000, 2001, 2005, 2007, and 2008, here we are today. A fraud that should have been stopped at under $7 billion in 2000 has now grown to $50 billion.
He says due to the agency's ineptitude and financial illiteracy, the SEC would have never caught Madoff had he not turned himself in.
I gift-wrapped and delivered the largest Ponzi scheme in history to them. If a $50 billion Ponzi scheme doesn't make the SEC's priority list, then I want to know who sets their priorities.
Markopoulos says he tried to remove Madoff from the playing field, but the referee wasn't listening, despite what he described as an immediate red flag.
It was a 45-degree angle, without any variation. It went in only one direction, up. It never had variation like the market does, like this.
The SEC says its response is limited because of the ongoing Madoff investigation. Markopoulos says he submitted many documents anonymously because he and his team were concerned about their safety. Lindsay Davis, ABC News, New York.
Joe Mager is a senior analyst at The Motley Fool. He's joining us now with more. Joe, good morning, good afternoon. So we are hearing now more about Harry Markopoulos. We just heard more right there in that piece from Lindsay Davis, a fraud investigator who says he tried to tell the SEC about Madoff, but no one would basically listen. Why?
Well, first of all, that was some pretty brutal "I told you so's" out there. We all but poked them in the face. In fairness to the guys at the SEC, the reality is this is a government agency that's supposed to be regulating this huge industry that's increasingly complex. They're doing it with limited resources, limited personnel. And the reality is, if you want the best sleuths out there tracking, they're not going to want to work for the SEC. That sounds terrible, but, the best talent in the industry goes to the private sector. Mm-hmm. And so you've got these guys trying to chase down these guys making all this money in this fresh industry, and it's just not really realistic.
All right. Well, Wells Fargo has canceled its trip to Las Vegas. Basically, they had to, didn't they, with all the attention and all the pressure that was being put on them?
They did, but I think it's kind of unfortunate, and I know that sounds like a strange tack to take, but the reality is these guys have to keep compensating their employees, and while this kind of smacks of a junket, they have to retain employees, and when you think about it, Wells Fargo, compared to a lot of the lenders out there, has been extremely conservative, so it's kind of unfortunate they got thrown under the bus.
And this is going to happen to a lot more companies. They're going to have to, especially those that are getting, a handout from the government.
Sure. What we're hearing is that the Obama administration is really going to lay down the law with the second half of the TARP money. Today I heard rumors that they're going to cap out the amount of, the amount of money that executives could make. It's something like $500K. Now, how that was fairly determined, who knows? But clearly, they're about to get very serious in dealing with banks.
Yeah, that's not even a rumor because we heard that from the president himself and the Treasury Secretary. They just announced that just a short time ago. Let's talk about Ticketmaster and Live Nation. They're close now to a merger. That deal would consolidate two of the most powerful forces in the music industry all under one roof. Is that a good thing?
I would say it's a very bad thing if you're a small band trying to make it in this world, mm-hmm. and I'd say it's a bad thing if you're a consumer. For investors, I'm not really sure there's going to be the synergy here that they expect. This sounds like a lot of whiz-bang kind of mergers. We expect to see all this operating leverage gained. The reality is most mergers and acquisitions don't produce value like that, so I think it's going to seem like a big deal initially, but ultimately won't end up driving a lot of value for shareholders.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that one. And let's talk about China right now. We're hearing today that China is selling more cars than America. Not really a huge shock, but what do we need to do right here to change all of that?
Well, I don't think there's anything. Well, okay, first I'll say that you're right. There's absolutely no shock there. GM's sales were off in North America, something like 40%. Ford was at 40%. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the Chinese selling more cars than we do within the confines of their country. I mean, that's basically within the scope of their economy. So it's kind of like one of those, he hits certain percentage away on off days in baseball, these crazy ESPN stats that you see. It's a nice little step, and in the big picture, it doesn't really mean anything for investors.
All right, Joe Mager, a senior analyst with The Motley Fool. Thanks so much for taking the time and joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.